The series begins with a high school girl named Kim Hye-In. At that time, she had to work part-time at a convenience store to support herself because her family was not well off. Despite having parents, Hye-In knew she had to fend for herself. On the other side of town, there was a prestigious school called Chungdam International High School. This school catered to wealthy students who enjoyed luxurious privileges provided by their parents. Among these privileged students were Park Woo-jin and Min Yoo-lee. Unfortunately, they didn't show any sympathy towards the protests happening outside their school. At Chungdam High School, it was common for all the students to wear expensive branded items. Some students, like Oh Si-eun, even went to the extent of renting entire restaurants just for themselves. There was also Lee So-man, who spent exorbitant amounts of money to buy luxury motorcycles. Amidst the lavishness displayed by the wealthy students, some students from less fortunate backgrounds felt inferior. Kim Hye-In was one of them. She rejected extravagant gifts from So-do-an because she felt undeserving of such generosity. When Do-an discovered the reason behind Hye-In's refusal, he decided to throw the gift away. The following day, something happened at Chungdam High School involving the most influential student, Baek Je-Na. She was being reprimanded by a teacher for her bad behavior. Despite being the school owner's daughter, Je-Na remained calm while facing the teacher. Suddenly, many of her friends barged into the room and pretended to be the ones at fault. In that moment, Je-Na arrogantly claimed that she could be the most powerful and feared royal family member in ancient times. Meanwhile, something unexpected occurred. Hye-In became a new student at Chungdam High School after receiving a scholarship. She developed a strong dislike for Je-Na and all the upper-class students who treated people from low-income backgrounds with arrogance. Just 3 months earlier, Hye-In was attending Sunwoo High School. After school, she worked as a part-time tutor in the afternoons and ran a convenience store at night. One day, Hye-In landed a tutoring job for a high school student who happened to be the daughter of the wealthy Kang family. When she met Mrs. Kang, a middle-aged woman, she couldn't help but feel exhausted listening to Mrs. Kang boast about her wealth and connections. At night, while Hye-In was working her part-time shift at the convenience store, she met Lee Soon-ju. Soon-ju, a student from Hankook University, often visited the store, and they soon became close friends. They would share their problems and talk about their lives. The next day, Hye-In's homeroom teacher called her aside at school. The teacher informed her that the school wouldn't cover her expenses for the New Zealand camping trip. They reasoned that there were other students who needed the support more than her. Hearing that, Hye-In felt disappointed deep down because she really wanted to go on that school event. When her classmates, Kim Ji-soo and Choi Yo-jin, asked her about the camping trip, Hye-In simply replied that it wasn't that important to her, so she decided not to participate. In reality, she had to lie to hide the fact that she came from a poor family. She didn't want her friends to treat her differently or push her away. Then, when Hye-In arrived home, she tried to talk to her father, Hyung-koo, about the canceled school camping trip abroad. However, he advised her to live within their means and not to force herself to attend the event if they couldn't afford it. Hye-In felt disappointed with his response and scolded her older brother, who was comfortably sleeping in her room. Deep down, she longed to live like a Chungdam High School student who could have anything without worrying about money. On another day, Hye-In started working as a tutor for Kang Na-yeon, a middle school student who aspired to attend Chungdam High School. Instead of studying, Na-yeon was busy showing off her expensive branded bag. At that time, Hye-In could only wait and was shocked when she saw the price tag. She expressed that she wouldn't spend her money on such luxury items. Na-yeon, upon hearing this, offered the bag to her. Initially, Hye-In refused, but eventually accepted it when Na-yeon insisted. Unfortunately, after Hye-In agreed, Na-yeon scoffed and made a comment about poor people always pretending to reject things they actually want. Soon after, Hye-In shared the incident with Soon-ju and couldn't help but feel that her life was incredibly unfair. A few days later, Hye-In went to the Kang family's house again to teach Na-yeon. However, when she arrived, the family's maid informed her that Na-yeon would be home late. At that time, Hye-In had to wait in Na-yeon's room. Then, as she saw the branded bag, she suddenly felt a strong desire to try it on. She took a photo and uploaded it on her social media, pretending that the bag belonged to her. Shortly after, Hye-In arrived, and Hye-In quickly put the bag down and started their private lessons. The next day at school, Hye-In noticed that her friends were avoiding her. She wondered if news about her family's financial situation had spread. Fortunately, because of her previous post with the branded bag, her school friends believed that she was actually rich but pretending to be poor. The positive comments on her social media posts made her feel happier and more excited. During recess, her friends asked Hye-In for clarification about her background. There, she finally admitted that she was the daughter of a wealthy man. To prove her confession, the following day, she arrived at the Kang family's place earlier than her scheduled teaching time. She tried on Hye-In's luxury items and posted pictures of them on social media. Meanwhile, at Chungdam High School, Je-Na and her group of wealthy friends were seen bullying students from less privileged backgrounds, including Hye-In, who was rumored to have reported their actions to the school. Since none of the students confessed, Je-Na ordered some of them to jump into the swimming pool as a punishment. Without hesitation, the students obeyed. Je-Na then approached the underprivileged students, stating that their only fault was being born into poor families. Meanwhile, a few days earlier, at Sunwoo High School, Hye-In started gaining admiration from her friends. She shared how her parents, despite being wealthy, didn't spoil her. Instead, she chose to work part-time and earn her own pocket money. Her friends mentioned that if Hye-In could get 10,000 followers on her social media, she could start making money by endorsing various products. This sparked her interest in monetizing her social media presence. On the other hand, an English teacher named Min-Hee at Chungdam High School felt irritated when she noticed Je-Na sleeping in class while she was explaining the lesson. Soon after, Min-Hee approached Je-Na and woke her up, requesting her to show more respect in her class. In response, Je-Na casually repeated the English words spoken by Min-Hee and claimed that her pronunciation was better. She told the English teacher to study more before teaching someone else. This infuriated Min-Hee, especially considering Je-Na's status as the school owner's daughter. Shortly after, the scene shifts back to Hye-In. At that time, because feeling self-conscious, she took it a step further. Before their tutoring session, she entered Hye-In's room and started trying on various clothes and jewelry that belonged to her student. Unsatisfied, Hye-In even tried on the Chungdam High School uniform that Hye-In was going to wear. Just as she was wearing the uniform, Hye-In entered the room, so Hye-In quickly hid under the bed. Unfortunately, Hye-In had left her phone behind, and it started ringing with notifications from her social media posts. Then, Hye-In checked the phone and discovered Hye-In's behavior of wearing her belongings and posting about them online. Since she had been caught, Hye-In was forced to admit everything and begged Hye-In not to report it to Mrs. Kang. She even offered to resign as a tutor. Hearing that, Hye-In agreed not to report her, but on the condition that Hye-In had to do all her homework. As a result, Hye-In sought help from Sunju to complete Hye-In's homework. At that moment, Sunju questioned why she felt the need to pretend to be rich, and Hye-In simply admitted that she had lost her mind and was tempted to do so. Besides doing all of Hye-In's household chores, Hye-In also had to serve as her personal assistant, carrying groceries and disposing of unwanted drinks. Furthermore, Hye-In made Hye-In do her friend's homework, which annoyed Hye-In. However, she had no choice but to fulfill these demands to avoid being reported to Mrs. Kang. The next day, while Hye-In was in the middle of an exam, Hye-In called her urgently, asking her to deliver some files for her registration at Chungdam High School. Soon after, Hye-In hurriedly went to the Kang family's house to find the files and then drove to Chungdam High School where Hye-In was waiting. Upon arriving, Hye-In accidentally overheard Hye-In talking to her friends about intentionally making Hye-In miss her exam. Even after handing over the files, Hye-In openly admitted in front of Hye-In that she had done it on purpose. Knowing that made Hye-In feel both angry and sad. Feeling overwhelmed, Hye-In went to the restroom and cried. Shortly after, Hye-In entered the restroom and offered her a handkerchief. After washing her face, Hye-In noticed a post-it note stuck to Hye-In's back, revealing that she came from a poor family. There, Hye-In took the note and crumpled it, questioning whether it was wrong for them to be born into such circumstances. Meanwhile, in a grand hall, Na-yeon was conducting interviews for new admissions at the prestigious school. Unexpectedly, Hye-In burst into the room carrying a bucket of water, which she splashed onto Na-yeon. Sometime earlier, a student named Min-sol, who had also been a victim of bullying from Je-Na's group, confessed to being the one who reported their actions. Feeling defeated, Bo-seok packed his belongings in his locker, preparing to leave the school. As he was about to depart, Hye-In tried to convince him to stay, pleading for him not to give up on school. However, Bo-seok, unable to endure the bullying any longer, expressed that he didn't want to go through it again. At that time, Hye-In felt guilty because she was the one who reported Je-Na and her group. Then she approached one of the teachers, protesting against the lack of punishment for the bullies. Unfortunately, the school didn't respond adequately, as they were preoccupied with other matters and didn't prioritize the concerns of a student from a lower class. Meanwhile, Hye-In, who had just left the restroom, was searching for the hall where Na-yeon was conducting the new admissions interviews. Along the way, she bumped into Je-Na and asked for directions to the room. At that moment, Je-Na seemed hesitant to help and simply walked away, leaving Hye-In puzzled. Meanwhile, on the school rooftop, Do-an was sitting alone when So-mong approached. There, they engaged in a brief conversation, but when So-mong lit a cigarette, Do-an promptly reported him to the school administration, citing concerns about his health. So-mong, who initially came to the rooftop to smoke, gave up his intention and returned to the information desk. He and another new student, Min-kwon, volunteered to provide information to prospective candidates who would be attending the entrance interviews that day. Shortly after, Hye-In arrived at the information desk, carrying a bucket of water. Meanwhile, So-mong and Min-kwon, who were engaged in an argument, were surprised to see her. Then, Hye-In asked them about the hall where the interviews were taking place. Despite their surprise, they directed her to the room. Without hesitation, she rushed into the room and drenched Na-yeon with the water she had brought. As a result of this incident, Na-yeon was left in tears and expressed her intention to report it to her mother. Not long after, Mrs. Kang arrived and scolded Hye-In for disrupting the Chungdam High School entrance interviews. Unfortunately, the commotion disturbed the peaceful atmosphere of the school, prompting the headmaster, So Hee-soo, to intervene. There, he informed Mrs. Kang that her actions were tarnishing the school's image, which would be taken into consideration regarding Na-yeon's acceptance or rejection. After some time, at Sungwoo High School, Hye-In encounters her homeroom teacher, who delivers the news that she may face expulsion due to her actions at Chungdam High School. Furthermore, her true identity, as someone pretending to be wealthy, has been exposed, causing her friends to distance themselves from her as she had deceived them. Then, as she returns to her seat, she finds a note labeling her as a fraud. Meanwhile, Yuli and Woo-jin stumble upon one of Hye-In's unexpected social media posts, featuring her wearing the Chungdam High School uniform. Intrigued by the unfamiliar sight, they'd realize they have never seen her at their school. At the same time, Je-Na, who is with them, becomes curious about their conversation, and Yuli shows her the post. Unfortunately, Hye-In deletes the post abruptly, and her social media accounts become private. Even Je-Na cannot view the image that her friends were discussing. On another occasion, Hye-In approached Hee-soo to request that Chungdam High School consider admitting Na-yeon. Unfortunately, Hee-soo replied that it was none of her business, reminding Hye-In that she was just a student from a poor family. Soon after, Hye-In attempted to plead again, but Hee-soo dismissed her, asserting that his decision could not be contested. Feeling dejected, Hye-In entered one of the school restrooms and began to cry, unable to convince the headmaster of Chungdam High School. Unexpectedly, at the same time, So-mong was smoking in the ladies' restroom. When he heard someone enter, he quickly hid his cigarette, trying not to make a sound and waiting for the person to leave. Unfortunately, Hye-In continued to cry, causing So-mong to sneak out of one of the stalls in order to leave the restroom. Just as he was tiptoeing around, Hye-In noticed him and assumed that he had entered the restroom with ill intentions towards her. At that time, she nearly considered calling the police to report him. However, So-mong immediately stopped her and admitted that he had entered the restroom to smoke because he couldn't do so on the school roof after being reported by his friend. He also shared that the ladies' restroom was rarely used due to spooky stories circulating about it. A little while later, So-mong realized that Hye-In wasn't a student at their school and questioned her about her true identity. Eventually, he remembered her as the girl who had brought the bucket of water to the information desk earlier. Then Hye-In quickly left the school after retrieving her identification that she had left at the entrance. In the evening, Hye-In returned to Chungdam High School and sneaked into the premises by jumping over the fence. So-mong, who had discovered her intention to meet Hee-soo again, offered his assistance. He warned her that the headmaster was known for being firm in his stance, making it challenging to change his mind. Nonetheless, Hye-In refused to give up easily, and So-mong could only offer his support and encouragement. Soon after, So-mong shared information about Hee-soo's red car that he usually drove to school. At that moment, Hye-In patiently waited for the principal to leave and approach the car. Unfortunately, Hee-soo did not appear, and Hye-In found herself waiting until she fell asleep. Meanwhile, So-mong, smoking in the women's restroom, noticed that Hee-soo sometimes arrived in a different car. Unexpectedly, that night, Hee-soo left in a black car. Exhausted and drowsy, Hye-In missed the chance to meet the headmaster. Late into the night, driven by curiosity about Hee-soo's departure, Hye-In decided to inspect the parked red car. Suddenly, she heard a noise and turned in its direction, only to be stunned by the sight of Hye-In falling from the school's roof. Initially thinking it was a terrible act, Hye-In glanced upward and spotted someone on the roof. The incident was reported to the police, who questioned Hye-In for more details. Meanwhile, Hee-soo's subordinate, who was present at the police station, reported the incidents to his superiors, causing Hee-soo to panic. There, he instructed that the case be attributed to hurting herself act because of school-related stress. Unfortunately, Hye-In, still shocked by what she had witnessed, was unable to provide extensive information to the police. Then, after a night at the police station, Hye-In boarded a bus to head home. As she stepped off the bus, Mrs. Kang appeared unexpectedly, bearing gifts. Seeing that, Hye-In wondered why Mrs. Kang suddenly treated her kindly when she had scolded her before. Mrs. Kang expressed her gratitude to Hye-In for persuading Hee-soo to accept Na-yeon into Chungdam High School. She then asked Hye-In to speak highly of the Kang family in front of the headmaster, aiming to establish new connections and expand their family business. Surprised by the sudden change in Mrs. Kang's behavior, Hye-In reluctantly agreed to the request. Upon arriving home, Hye-In faced her father's scolding for being out all night. The two engaged in an argument, during which Hye-In asserted that her father didn't need to interfere in her affairs, as she stormed off to her room. After charging her cell phone, which had run out of battery the previous night, Hye-In discovered numerous missed calls and messages from Hee-soo, urgently asking her to contact him. Soon after, she promptly reached out to Hee-soo, and they reached an agreement. That night, Hye-In appeared rushed as she prepared to go somewhere. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Hye-In miraculously survived the fall from the building's roof, but she remains in a coma, yet to regain consciousness. At that time, her mother, accompanied by a Chungdam High School student named Min-sol, visits Hye-In. Soon after, Hye-In's mother mentions that a student claiming to be a close friend of Hye-In had also visited the hospital. This information surprises Min-sol, as it's rare for students at Chungdam High School to have genuine close friendships. The following day, a police cordon is set up around the area where Hye-In fell. At the same time, Do-an is seen near the scene, which catches So-mong off guard. Just as So-mong is about to ask Do on what he's doing there, he abruptly leaves, leaving So-mong to resume his duty as a volunteer welcoming new students to the school. Then, So-mong advises the new student to be cautious and aware of her standing at the school, so as not to end up like one of the students who jumped from the roof. The new student reveals that she is the daughter of a clinic owner, but So-mong suggests that her status alone may not be enough to be well received by the students at Chungdam. Meanwhile, Bae Je-Na and her group were observed making fun of a student from a lower social class who couldn't make a significant donation to the school. Soon after, Je-Na approached Ga-young and inquired about the donation amount Ga-young's family had given to Chungdam High School. Hearing that, Ga-young appeared anxious when confronted with the question, and upon seeing her name on the donation board ranked much lower than Je-Na's, Je-Na pointed out that Ga-young had no right to bully less privileged students at the school. When the class resumed, Je-Na abruptly interrupted the teacher, expressing her boredom as she believed all the students already knew the answers to the questions being asked. She felt like she didn't belong in the class. In another instance, Do-an was seen examining a list of new students, including those transferring from other schools, who were set to join Chungdam High School. Among the names on the list was Hye-In, who would soon become a new student there. Meanwhile, at Sunwoo High School, Hye-In continues to face mockery from her friends. Ji-soo, on the other hand, openly acknowledges her modest background, emphasizing that it's nothing to be ashamed of. However, Hye-In remains unfazed by their comments, choosing to distance herself from her friends. Soon after her departure, word spreads among the students that Hye-In has been accepted into Chungdam High School, which sparks jealousy among them. Later that evening, Hye-In confides in Seung-ju about her plan to quit her part-time job due to her acceptance into the prestigious school. Seung-ju feels saddened by the prospect of losing her confidant and is curious about the agreement Hye-In made with the principal. However, she evades the topic and suggests they have dinner together to celebrate her acceptance, using the money she had saved from her part-time work. The following day, a subordinate of Hee-soo delivers a Chungdam High School uniform to Hye-In's house, bringing her immense joy as she finally possesses the school uniform she had always dreamt of. Determined not to be seen as a student from an underprivileged background, Hye-In uses her savings to buy brand new shoes worth over $1,000 from a mall. Despite the hefty expense, she feels a sense of pride and even takes the opportunity to browse through several clothing stores, simply enjoying the experience. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Hye-In, a girl wearing a hat had been observing her from a distance. As Hye-In exited the store, the girl accidentally bumped into her and slipped something into the shoe bag Hye-In had just opened. Concerned about her shoes, Hye-In hurried to the restroom to inspect them. Fortunately, her expensive shoes were unharmed. Inside the shopping bag, she discovered a piece of paper with a note praising how cool she looked in the Chungdam High School uniform and hinting at someone being killed for it. Shocked by the message, Hye-In quickly exited the restroom in search of the person who had given her the note. However, she found no one suspicious nearby as the girl in the hat had moved to a different floor to monitor her. Returning to the restroom, Hye-In realized that her shopping bag had vanished, causing her to panic. In the midst of her search, Je-Na emerged from one of the restroom stalls, wearing the shoes Hye-In had purchased. Annoyed to see someone else wearing her new shoes, Hye-In approached Je-Na and requested their return. However, Je-Na noticed Hye-In's uniform and name tag, but disregarded it, refusing to give back the shoes. Frustrated, Hye-In resorted to pulling Je-Na's hair in an act of defiance. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Hye-In's mother expresses her gratitude to Min-sol for his visit, where Hye-In is still receiving treatment. While bidding farewell and preparing to leave, she suddenly recalls the name of a student who claimed to be a close friend of Hye-In. This revelation shocks Min-sol, leaving him unable to believe what he has just heard. On the other hand, in a previous incident, Je-Na had coincidentally visited the same shoe store where Hye-In had purchased her shoes. Trying on different styles, Je-Na happened to choose the same design as Hye-In and immediately put them on. Upon leaving the store, she ran into Min-hee. At that time, Min-hee, besides being an English teacher at Chungdam High School, is engaged in an affair with Je-Na's father, Mr. Baek. During their encounter, Min-hee expressed her genuine love for Mr. Baek and clarified that her attraction was not influenced by his wealth or the company he manages. Money and social status held no significance to her because it was the depth of their connection that mattered most. Je-Na, upon hearing Min-hee's confession, appeared skeptical, finding it hard to believe her words because Min-hee's claims contradicted her actions, as Je-Na herself had recently visited an upscale store where items were priced far beyond Min-hee's monthly salary as a teacher. Min-hee, realizing she had no valid argument left, fell silent, leaving Je-Na to storm off to the restroom and cry. Overwhelmed by her mounting family troubles, Je-Na sought solace within the confines of the restroom. After composing herself, Je-Na emerged from the cubicle to wash her hands, only to find herself accused of stealing Hye-In's shoes. Je-Na had no chance to explain that the shoes were actually hers, as Hye-In snatched them away forcefully. Hye-In successfully reclaimed her shoes and felt relieved that she hadn't lost her valuable possession. On the other hand, Je-Na had to surrender her shoes, returning home barefoot with a disheveled appearance after losing the confrontation with Hye-In. Annoyed by the situation, Je-Na scolded the maid who greeted her, instructing the maid to keep quiet, and retreated into the house. In the meantime, Do-an was secretly snooping around Hee-Soo's office, searching for something. His curiosity led him to stumble upon Hye-In's acceptance form to Chungdam High School. It appeared that Do-an had discovered something his father had agreed upon with Hye-In. Fortunately, Hee-Soo returned to his room shortly after, unaware that Do-an had been in his office. He cautioned his son not to associate too closely with So-mong, expressing concern that Do-an might follow in the delinquent's footsteps. Hee-Soo had witnessed So-mong in a battered state after a confrontation with a priest, further solidifying his worries. The following day marked Hye-In's first day at Chungdam High School. Excitedly, she explored the school grounds, marveling at the luxurious facilities she would now have access to. At the same time, Yuli and Woo-jin, who were engaging in intimate activities in the group's headquarters, were taken aback and irritated by Je-Na's sudden entrance without knocking. At that time, Je-Na, with a sour expression, made it clear that she was furious with Hye-In and was determined to make her school life a nightmare. Meanwhile, Hye-In was in the teacher's room, obtaining her locker keys. It was there that she encountered So-mong, who was still busy volunteering to guide new students around the school. At that moment, So-mong was quite surprised to see Hye-In as a student at their school, considering that just a few days ago she was attending a different school altogether. As they stepped out of the room, So-mong approached Hye-In, offering to show her around the school premises. However, she declined, claiming that she had already familiarized herself with the layout. Despite her refusal, So-mong insisted on accompanying her, not willing to let her go so easily. Just then, Do-an arrived on the scene and urged So-mong not to force Hye-In. So-mong was taken aback by Do-an's intervention and inquired about his relationship with Hye-In. Then, Do-an responded that he had just met her that day and firmly held onto her hand. Reluctant to let go, So-mong requested that Hye-In release his grip, but she chose to go with Do-an instead. A little while later, Do-an and Hye-In exchanged introductions and phone numbers. There, he advised Hye-In to reach out if she ever needed help while at school. After parting ways, Do-an seemed to recall her name. Continuing her walk, Hye-In accidentally bumped into Shi-eun, who had been following her around the mall. Suddenly, Shi-eun dropped Hye-In's phone, quickly apologized, and left. At that time, Hye-In didn't make a big deal out of it and continued towards her locker. However, upon opening her locker, she was shocked to find a pair of shoes she had purchased earlier with a welcome to hell note attached. It dawned on her that the shoes she was wearing were actually Je-Na's. Meanwhile, the other students who were aware of the trouble between Hye-In and Je-Na displayed clear disapproval towards her. Some even intimidated her, eager to know what Hye-In had done to make Je-Na so angry. Refusing to divulge any details, Hye-In attempted to escape, triggering a pursuit from numerous students. With nowhere else to turn, Hye-In sought refuge in Hee-Soo's office, seeking assistance. However, the headmaster refused to intervene personally. Hearing that, she felt frustrated, as Hee-Soo hadn't informed her about the school's culture. Yet the headmaster had no intention of getting involved, explaining that his authority was limited to granting her a scholarship. If Hye-In felt uncomfortable, she had the option to return to her previous school. Reluctant to take that route, she lingered in disappointment as Hee-Soo instructed her to leave the office immediately. After leaving Hee-Soo's room, Hye-In desperately tried to escape the pursuing students, eventually resorting to leaving the building through a window. Unfortunately, she encountered Je-Na, whom she accused of orchestrating threats that led to the entire student body chasing her. Hearing that, Je-Na vehemently denied the accusations, expressing a desire to resolve the situation. Unexpectedly, Hye-In confronted Je-Na, surprising everyone with her boldness, and a fight ensued. The students watched in awe as Hye-In displayed her courage. This further infuriated Je-Na, intensifying her pursuit. Continuing to evade her pursuers, Hye-In found herself running in circles as some students noticed her presence. In a stroke of luck, Shi-Eun intervened, pulling her into the art room for shelter. Shi-Eun treated Hye-In with kindness and empathy, leading Hye-In to suspect that Shi-Eun was one of the good students. Shi-Eun then revealed that dealing with Je-Na would be challenging, since she ruled the school and had formed a group called Diamond, consisting of wealthy students who often bullied those from lower social classes. After leaving the art room, Hye-In reached out to Do-won, who had previously offered his help if she encountered any difficulties at school. Soon after, she found herself once again pursued by students. Then, as she reached the top floor, Hye-In made a daring decision to jump to the ground floor to evade her pursuers. The sight of her actions caused panic among the students. Fortunately, Do-won arrived just in time to save her from the fall. Witnessing Do-won's heroic act, the students were astounded, assuming a connection between them. After school, Je-Na receives information about Do-won saving Hye-In, which sparks her curiosity about their relationship. At the same time, she recalls her encounter with Hye-In on the school roof before the incident that caused Hye-In to fall. In the evening, Je-Na attends a family dinner with Baek and Min-hee. However, she doesn't seem to enjoy the gathering as she still hasn't accepted Min-hee's presence as her future stepmother. Suddenly, things take a turn when Min-hee calmly announces that she is pregnant with Baek's child, further upsetting Je-Na. In response, she chooses not to eat, abruptly leaves them, and storms off. Meanwhile, Hye-In, who had been saved by Do-won, finds herself on the school roof where Do-won tends to her injured leg. Experiencing his caring gestures, Hye-In begins to develop feelings for him, believing that he likes her. However, after chatting for a while, Hye-In comes to realize that Do-won actually has feelings for Hye-In, not her. Then, Do-won asks Hye-In about the person responsible for Hye-In's fall from the roof, knowing that she witnessed the incident. Initially annoyed, Hye-In refuses to provide any information. However, Do-won changes her mind by promising to do anything if she shares what she knows. Hearing that, she agrees but tells him that she needs time and wants to see how he treats her. The next morning, Hye-In and Do-won go to school together, hand in hand, surprising Je-Na and other students. When Ga-young asks about their relationship, Hye-In claims that they are dating. Similarly, Do-won tells his friends about their relationship and asks them not to bother Hye-In. Hearing that, Woo-jin and Yuli are left speechless as they never expected Do-won to be involved with a student from a lower social class. Meanwhile, So-mong, who is becoming interested in Hye-In, disapproves of her relationship with Do-won, especially since they have only known each other for 2 days. Despite So-mong's reservations, Hye-In pays no attention to his comments. In the classroom, Ga-young and her group unexpectedly greet Hye-In in a friendly manner, surprising her with the sudden change in their attitude. Ga-young then invites Hye-In to a party organized by the girls' club at Chungdam High School. She explains that usually only students from wealthy families attend the party, but since Hye-In is officially dating Do-won, she becomes a special guest. Initially, Hye-In shows little interest in going to the party. However, later that night, while working at a convenience store, she meets Soon-ju, who suggests that Hye-In should accept the invitation. Then, Soon-ju points out that it's a good opportunity for Hye-In to socialize with wealthy kids and make connections for the future. Realizing she doesn't have a dress for the party, Hye-In shares her concern with Soon-ju. Soon-ju then introduces her to Na-yeon, who is willing to lend Hye-In a party dress. However, Na-yeon asks Hye-In to share the details of the club's activities, since she wasn't invited. Besides that, Na-yeon expects Hye-In to take good care of the expensive dress and not ruin it. Back at home, Hye-In, who has accepted Ga-young's invitation, receives an official invitation with a barcode sent to her mobile number. The next evening, Hye-In arrived at the party venue accompanied by Soon-ju, who had hailed a taxi for them. Seeing Hye-In's nervousness, Seung-ju tried to reassure her and said that this party might be an opportunity for her to meet someone who could change her future. Encouraged by Seung-ju's words, Hye-In gained some confidence as they entered the extravagant party room. Then she decided to enjoy the party and even took a sip of red wine. However, a sudden collision with Ga-yeon caused Hye-In to spill her drink. Fortunately, Hye-In managed to avoid spilling the red wine on the expensive white dress she had borrowed. To her surprise, Je-Na also arrived at the party, and Hye-In began to realize that the whole event was orchestrated to trap her. Without hesitation, Je-Na purposely spilled red wine on the dress that Hye-In was wearing, which belonged to Na-yeon. At that time, Hye-In panicked, knowing that Na-yeon would be furious and demand compensation for the damaged dress. Feeling helpless, Hye-In found herself confronted by two guards who prevented her from retaliating against Je-Na. Je-Na then instructed the guards to escort Hye-In out of the party, deeming her unworthy of being there. After the party ended, Je-Na returned to her car and instructed her personal assistant to reprimand the maid who had cleaned her room. She expressed annoyance with the way her belongings were handled, emphasizing her preference for everything to remain exactly where it should be. Her irritation grew when she saw the news circulating about her father's increasingly serious relationship with Min-hee, which had attracted media attention. Upon arriving home, Je-Na was furious with her mother, who continued to spend her time drinking despite Je-Na's pleas for her to drink less. She also tried to make her mother understand the importance of not remaining silent when other women tried to take advantage of Baek, who was only interested in his wealth. However, Je-Na's mother seemed helpless because Baek wanted a male heir to inherit his company, a role that Je-Na couldn't fulfill. As a result, she allowed Baek to have an affair with Min-hee. Meanwhile, Hye-In found herself in trouble for ruining Na-yeon's dress. She felt confused and anxious when Na-yeon demanded that she replace the dress as soon as possible. Wanting to resolve the issue, Hye-In decided to ask her father and older brother for money during their family breakfast. Hyun-koo, who had just received his paycheck, immediately offered to help and asked how much money Hye-In needed. However, when Hye-In mentioned the amount of $8,000, her older brother became extremely angry, expressing his disappointment at her lack of consideration. Feeling defeated, Hye-In retreated to her room. Her older brother scolded her, pointing out that she hadn't thought twice before asking for money, even though she knew that their father's monthly salary couldn't cover such a large amount. Unfortunately, Na-yeon continued to pressure Hye-In to repay the dress within 1 month, further adding to Hye-In's frustration. She regretted attending the party, realizing she had forced herself into a situation that only brought more trouble. Meanwhile, in another location, Na-yeon and Je-Na have joined forces to torment Hye-In, continuing their relentless bullying. As the two of them were chatting, Do-an suddenly appeared and approached Je-Na, urging her to stop the harassment. Sadly, Je-Na disregarded his plea, as she was determined not to rely on anyone else for help. However, Do-an persisted in his efforts to make her understand, emphasizing his love for Hye-In, whom Je-Na knew as Hye-In. Then Je-Na attempted to advise Do-an against loving Hye-In too deeply, as she believed it wouldn't be as fulfilling as he imagined. Unfortunately, Do-an paid no heed to Je-Na's advice, despite their 18-year friendship. Just as Je-Na was about to explain her viewpoint once again, Do-an abruptly asked her to stop, prompting her to leave since he didn't want to listen to her perspective. Meanwhile, So-mong, resting in front of a convenience store after parking his motorcycle, stumbled upon a video of Hye-In's humiliation from a previous party. He couldn't help but feel sorry for Hye-In, who had always been a student at his school. Not too long ago, So-mong happened to spot Hye-In meeting a man on the side of the road, causing him to assume that the man had ill intentions toward her. Acting swiftly, So-mong stepped in to protect Hye-In, who seemed perplexed by his actions. Eventually, she clarified that the man So-mong was about to confront was not a wrongdoer, but a customer interested in buying the items she was selling because she needed the money. After completing the transaction, Hye-In still appeared annoyed with So-mong for not inquiring before jumping to conclusions. As they walked away, Hye-In requested that he not interfere in her affairs anymore. But still, So-Mong tried to catch up with her as she distanced herself, and she returned, explaining that due to his actions, she had to give a $50 discount, which she considered a significant amount of money given her reliance on the $8,000 she had. She emphasized that while it might not seem substantial to So-Mong and other wealthy students, it held great value in her current circumstances. At that time, So-Mong appeared to sympathize with Hye-In's predicament, even though he didn't provide direct assistance. This display of empathy left Hye-In wondering if he truly was a good student from a wealthy background, as his attitude contrasted with the arrogance she observed in other affluent students. Upon returning home, Hye-In resumed her efforts to sell her belongings, aiming to quickly gather the money needed to compensate for the damaged dress she owed Na-yeon. The following day at school, Hye-In approached one of the teachers and shared her problem. The teacher advised her to stay strong while offering scholarship leaflets that she could apply for to earn additional money. Then, as she left the teacher's room, Hye-In suddenly discovered a post-it note stuck to her back, labeling her as a parasite. Annoyed, she removed the note and continued walking to her class, only to bump into Je-Na. Soon after, the two engaged in another argument, with Je-Na mocking Hye-In for not giving up after the humiliation she endured at the previous party. There, Je-Na emphasized that, regardless of Hye-In's efforts, she would never be able to compete against someone with higher social status. In that moment, Je-Na openly expressed her intense dislike for Hye-In and her desire for Hye-In to leave the school. She proposed a deal that she would help Hye-In pay for Na-yeon's damaged dress, but in return, Hye-In must drop out of Chungdam High School. Even, Je-Na will give Hye-In 1 week to repay the debt, and failure to do so would result in immediate withdrawal from the school. Then, as Je-Na walked away, she taunted Hye-In, mentioning that if Hye-In left the school quickly, she might receive some money from Je-Na. After school, Hye-In returned home with Do-an and attempted to borrow money from him. However, he became angry with her for attending the party, stating that students like her shouldn't try too hard to fit in or seek attention. Hearing that, Hye-In felt upset and didn't accept his words. Do-an also inquired about Hye-In's promise to reveal the person who pushed Hye-In off the school roof. Then Hye-In tried to strike another deal by asking Do-an to lend her money before disclosing the perpetrator's identity. Feeling manipulated, Do-an declined the offer, leading Hye-In to declare that she was done talking to him. She then asked the driver to stop the car. Upon getting out, he told Do-an that she couldn't clearly see who the perpetrator was but was certain it was a woman. On another day, Hye-In bumped into Shi-Eun, who invited her to have lunch together. There, Shi-Eun had noticed that Hye-In had been skipping meals lately due to her troubles. During their conversation, Hye-In shared her financial problem, and Shi-Eun offered a solution. Shortly after, she informed Hye-In about a student named Lee Duk-min who was known for lending money to students in need. Excited about the possibility, Hye-In approached Duk-min, while Shi-Eun watched with a sly smile, satisfied that her plan had come together. After meeting Duk-min, Hye-In felt a sense of relief when she managed to secure a loan of $3,000. However, Duk-min then informed her that the debt must be repaid within a week. If she failed to make the payment on time, an additional $2,000 would be charged as interest each week. This revelation surprised Hye-In, who questioned why Duk-min hadn't mentioned these conditions earlier. Sensing Hye-In's objection, Duk-min offered an alternative solution. He proposed that she could avoid paying the interest if she helped him earn extra money by becoming a cosplayer. Feeling trapped with no other choice, Hye-In reluctantly agreed and participated in a photoshoot, donning various costumes. Meanwhile, Do-an finally visited Hye-In, who remained in a coma. Holding her hand, he expressed his hope that the person responsible for harming her would be revealed soon. Soon after, Do-an briefly recollected their encounter prior to the incident where Hye-In fell from the roof. He had intended to protect her from the bullying by students from affluent backgrounds, but she adamantly refused his help, leading to a heated argument and Do-an ultimately deciding to leave her. The guilt over the incident weighed heavily on him, as he believed he should have stayed on the school roof to ensure her safety. After leaving the hospital, Do-on sneaked back into his father Hee-Soo's room and accessed his computer files, hoping to uncover evidence that could expose those responsible for Hye-In's suffering. While examining the files, Do-on grew suspicious that his friend Woo-jin might have information about the incident, so he decided to approach him for answers. Meanwhile, Woo-jin was on a date with Yuli when he received a call that caused him to abruptly distance himself from her. His demeanor changed as he spoke to the caller, giving the impression that he was hiding something from Yuli. In fact, Woo-jin went as far as threatening the caller, vowing to harm them if their secret was revealed. At the same time, Hye-In was in her room, reflecting on the night Hye-In fell from the roof. She vividly remembered witnessing the incident and subsequently approaching Hye-In, who was still semi-conscious at the time. Then, Hye-In recalled how Hye-In had given her a necklace, which she still kept in her room. Overwhelmed with guilt, Hye-In realized that by withholding her testimony from the police, she had inadvertently contributed to the case being dismissed as a result of students succumbing to extreme academic pressure. The following day at school, Min-hee, who had resigned from her teaching position to become Baek's second wife, paid a visit to Chungdam High School. She met with her former colleagues, proudly proclaiming her upcoming role as the wife of the school's owner. At that time, Je-Na happened to overhear their conversation as she passed by, prompting Min-hee to approach her and try to maintain a friendly facade as her future stepmother. Je-Na, who despised Min-hee, bluntly questioned her presence at the school. Then Min-hee explained that she was simply greeting her former coworkers, but Je-Na retorted that she didn't belong there, calling her a homewrecker. This remark infuriated Min-hee, and she boasted about her unborn child being the one Baek truly desired, ensuring that her son would inherit all of Baek's companies. Hearing that, Je-Na was left feeling intimidated and remained silent in response. Fortunately, Hye-In intervened, posing as Je-Na's senior, and escorted her to class. Je-Na asked Hye-In to get rid of the woman who had torn her family apart, and Hye-In took on the task. In class, Hye-In handed Je-Na a drink to calm her down and brought up the topic of Min-hee becoming Baek's second wife. This upset Je-Na, who expressed her disdain for being pitied by others. At that time, Hye-In, feeling that Je-Na was still arrogant despite her help, disclosed that she didn't need to know about Je-Na's family issues, throwing money to repay her debt for Na-yeon's damaged dress. Then, as Hye-In prepared to leave the room, she declared that they were even and assured Je-Na that she wouldn't leave the school, urging her not to bother her again. Soon after, Hye-In offered advice to Je-Na, warning her not to act superior since she wasn't the most fearsome or powerful person in the school. She emphasized that she had no sympathy for Je-Na's problems due to their differing social classes and life goals. Following the incident, Hye-In was surprised that none of the students bothered her anymore, as Je-Na had instructed them to act normal towards her. This turn of events also caught Do-on off guard, leaving him curious about what had transpired between Hye-In and Je-Na. Then, Hye-In requested that Do-on not interfere in her affairs since he preferred to stay hidden, but he surprised her by taking her hand and asking her out on a date. Soon after, Do-on led Hye-In to the school rooftop, leaving her feeling uneasy about his intentions. At that time, curiosity led her to question his plans after she had dealt with Je-Na. In response, Do-on pressured her into dating him, resorting to threats by implying his father's influence if Hye-In revealed her knowledge of the culprit behind Hye-In's harm. Despite the threats, Hye-In stood her ground, knowing that Do-on's true affection lay with Hye-In, not her. With her resolve firm, Hye-In swiftly descended from the rooftop. While making her way to class, Hye-In received a message from Dukmin, demanding that she resume doing cosplay photoshoots to earn $5,000 and repay her debt. Meanwhile, on a different note, Je-Na engaged in a conversation with Yuli about her friend's sincere desire to marry Woo-jin. There, Yuli expressed her deep love for Woo-jin and her intent to marry him, but Je-Na remained doubtful about his suitability as a partner for her close friend. Then, as they chatted, Je-Na unexpectedly spotted Hye-In in the company of Shi-Eun, triggering concern within her about Hye-In's involvement with Shi-Eun. On the other hand, Shi-Eun continued to show kindness towards Hye-In, even taking the time to inquire about her well-being by writing in Hye-In's notebook. At that time, Hye-In noticed a familiar writing style and decided to compare it with a note she had received at the mall, which she had kept. To her surprise, the writings were nearly identical, revealing that Shi-Eun was the person responsible for the mall incident. Furthermore, Shi-Eun had been pretending to be a close friend of Hye-In. During a visit to Hye-In, who remained in a coma, Shi-Eun insinuated that she knew Do-won truly cared for Hye-In, but questioned if his feelings would change upon discovering the hidden side of Hye-In's behavior. Then, as Shi-Eun left the treatment room, she wore a pleased expression, believing that Hye-In remained oblivious to her true identity. It turned out, in the past, Shi-Eun used to be a well-respected student at Chungdam High School and even belonged to Je-Na's group. However, her family faced financial difficulties, leading to a decline in her social status and becoming a target for ridicule by many students. This caused her to have a falling out with one of the students and engage in a fight. As if that weren't enough, Shi-Eun had to face another harsh reality when Je-Na no longer wanted to be friends with her due to their differing social statuses, as per the rules Je-Na had established. At that time, Shi-Eun felt deeply hurt and refused to accept Je-Na's mistreatment. From that day on, their once close friendship turned into complete strangership, with Je-Na even requesting that Shi-Eun not appear in front of her until they finished their education at the school. In the present, Je-Na and Shi-Eun unexpectedly cross paths again. Je-Na wastes no time in questioning Shi-Eun about her intentions towards Hye-In. However, Shi-Eun evades the question, pretending not to understand what Je-Na is referring to. Then Je-Na sternly warns Shi-Eun to cease any plans she might have, but she fearlessly brings up Je-Na's parents' secret, revealing that she is not afraid of Je-Na's threats and has the ability to expose these secrets easily. Annoyed, Je-Na chooses to walk away from her. Meanwhile, in the art room, Hye-In is frantically searching for something because she suspects that Shi-Eun has deceived her. Just as she's looking, Shi-Eun enters the room and asks Hye-In what she's up to. There, Hye-In immediately questions Shi-Eun about the item she's searching for, but Shi-Eun continues to play innocent. However, Hye-In remains skeptical of everything Shi-Eun says until she finally reveals her true self to Hye-In. She admits to intentionally tricking Hye-In into being a part of her game from the beginning. Shi-Eun also reveals that she knows how Hye-In managed to enter Chungdam High School, thanks to a deal she made with Hee-Soo. Understanding that Shi-Eun is referring to the culprit who caused Hye-In to fall from the school roof, Hye-In confesses that she did see someone on the roof but has no idea who that person was. To Hye-In's surprise, Shi-Eun confesses that she knows the true identity of the person who pushed Hye-In, and she reveals that it was Je-Na. At that time, Hye-In finds it hard to believe, as she thinks Je-Na wouldn't go to such extremes with other students. However, Shi-Eun insists that Je-Na is responsible. She asks Hye-In to hold Je-Na accountable by being a witness that night and testifying that she saw Je-Na push Hye-In off the roof. If Hye-In refuses her request, Shi-Eun threatens to spread an inappropriate video of Hye-In to everyone in the school. She gives Hye-In a few days to consider and comply with her demand before she uploads the video. Then, just as Hye-In is about to leave the art room, Shi-Eun casually mentions that it's just a small favor she should do. Meanwhile, Do-won continues his investigation into the culprit who pushed Hye-In. He enters the break room, where Je-Na and others are present, expressing his suspicions about her since she harbored strong animosity towards Hye-In. Suddenly, the scene flashes back to the night when Je-Na and Hye-In had a heated argument before Hye-In fell. They clash over some information she threatens to use against Je-Na. At that time, Je-Na demands to know what Hye-In wants from her, disliking Hye-In's pretense of being good-natured in front of others. In the present, Je-Na visits her hospitalized mother, who suffered a psychological shock due to their family being torn apart by a third party. She finds solace in seeing her mother's improved condition and sharing laughter, despite feeling saddened by the cut marks on her mother's hands. Shortly after Je-Na leaves her mother's room, she accidentally overhears her personal assistant on the phone discussing the possibility of Je-Na's mother losing her shares for the baby Min-hee is carrying. Hearing that, the condition of Je-Na's still recovering mother weighs heavily on her mind. On the other hand, Hye-In walked alone, deepened thought about whether Je-Na could truly be the one who pushed Hye-In off the school roof. She still had doubts about Je-Na's actions. At the same time, while in the car, Je-Na noticed Hye-In and asked the driver to stop so she could have a chat with her. During their conversation, Je-Na expressed her admiration for Hye-In's unique personality, which differed from Hye-In's. At that time, she encouraged Hye-In to stay true to herself and stand up against anyone who tries to bring her down, just as Hye-In had done when they had their own conflict. Before leaving, Je-Na also cautioned Hye-In to be wary of Shi-Eun. After Je-Na departed, Hye-In pondered over their conversation and finally came up with a plan to break free from Shi-Eun's scheme. She immediately reached out to Do-won, asking for his help and promising to assist him in uncovering the culprits behind Hye-In's fall. The following day, Hye-In and Do-won headed to the break room where Je-Na's group usually gathered. At that time, they acted affectionately in front of Woo-jin, who was present in the room. They then requested Woo-jin to leave, pretending they wanted some privacy. Unaware of their true intentions, Woo-jin left the room, assuming they wanted time alone as a couple. As soon as Woo-jin was out of sight, Hye-In swiftly locked the door. Together with Do-won, they searched for her video files to prevent Shi-Eun from spreading them to the entire school. Once they found the flash drive, Hye-In contacted So-mong, who she had asked for assistance. She informed him that she had located the flash drive she had been searching for. After hearing that, So-mong proceeded with the plan by meeting Duk-min and pressuring him to delete all of Hye-In's videos. Initially, Duk-min refused, claiming the videos were for his private collection. However, So-mong didn't believe him and continued to threaten him until Duk-min finally deleted the videos in front of So-mong. Meanwhile, at Baek's company, Min-hee paid a visit to the office to meet Baek. Unexpectedly, Je-Na was also present in her father's room, surprising Min-hee. To Min-hee's astonishment, Je-Na expressed kindness towards her, accepting her as a part of their new family. After their conversation, Min-hee approached Je-Na privately and confronted her about her manipulative behavior towards Baek. She expressed her awareness that Je-Na was only pretending to be sweet to gain Baek's attention. Then, Je-Na admitted her true intentions, confessing that she wanted to regain all of Baek's attention and control. She assured Min-hee that the child Min-hee was carrying would never be able to compete with her because Je-Na would never let her father's wealth slip away into the hands of Min-hee and her son. With her final words, she left Min-hee, leaving her stunned by the audacity Je-Na had shown. Meanwhile, Hye-In, who had acquired multiple flash drives from the break room, contemplated checking each one of them. Eventually, she came across a video recording of Hye-In engaging in intimate moments with Woo-jin. At that time, Hye-In couldn't believe what she was witnessing and was taken aback by Hye-In's actions, especially considering that she was aware of Woo-jin's relationship with Yuli. The video fueled her curiosity about Hye-In's true nature and motives. The following day, Do-won approached Hye-In and invited her to a party hosted by Yuli and Woo-jin. Hye-In, recalling her past embarrassing experience at a student party, initially declined the invitation, fearing another public humiliation. However, after considering that she would be attending with Do-won, she eventually agreed to accompany him. Then, while Hye-In was in the restroom, she unexpectedly ran into Shi-Eun, who demanded that Hye-In promise to testify against Je-Na as the one who pushed Hye-In. She emphasized that it was Hye-In's last chance to avoid the spread of her video on social media for everyone to see. At that time, Hye-In requested some time to think about it, hoping to find a way to fulfill Shi-Eun's demand. However, she refused to listen and dismissed Hye-In's request. In response, Hye-In revealed a flash drive containing videos of Hye-In. She suspected that Shi-Eun might have done the same thing to Hye-In. Upon hearing this, she appeared to mock Hye-In, considering her to be a foolish girl. It turned out, in the past, Shi-Eun threatened Hye-In by stating that she would expose the video, specifically to Do-won, causing their relationship to end. She also added that she would refrain from sharing the video if Hye-In followed her request. Feeling trapped, Hye-In appeared extremely frightened at the thought of Do-won discovering her actions with Woo-jin. As a result, she complied with Shi-Eun's demand, which involved reporting Je-Na and her friends to the teacher for alleged bullying, even though Je-Na and her friends were innocent. In the present, Hye-In once again reminded Hye-In to obey her instructions if she wanted to prevent the video from spreading throughout the school. Shortly after Hye-In left the restroom, Hye-In was taken aback by the presence of So-Mong, who had overheard her conversation with Hye-In from one of the toilet cubicles. There, he apologized to Hye-In, acknowledging that he should have helped her earn money earlier to avoid her involvement with Dukmin. Soon after, Hye-In urged So-Mong not to dwell on the past, recognizing that no matter how hard people like them tried, their lives wouldn't change significantly. She also realized that everything she had done thus far was wrong, but she had never intended to comply with Hye-In's demands. Upon hearing this, So-Mong expressed her determination to teach Hye-In a lesson for everything she had done to Hye-In. Later in the evening, Hye-In joined Do-on at a party hosted by Yuli and Woo-jin. At that time, the event was going smoothly, and the atmosphere grew even more joyous when Woo-jin proposed to Yuli in front of everyone. However, amidst the festivities, a heated argument erupted between Do-on and Je-Na. There, Do-on persisted in accusing Je-Na of pushing Hye-In off the school roof, a claim Je-Na vehemently denied. In a desperate attempt to defend herself, Je-Na revealed a shocking secret that Hye-In had made the mistake of sleeping with Woo-jin. Suddenly, the party took a dark turn as Do-on nearly came to blows with Woo-jin, leaving Yuli in tears. Back in the past, Hye-In stumbled upon a video of herself and Woo-jin, which was given to her by Hye-In. Seizing the opportunity, Hye-In contacted Woo-jin and used the video as leverage, demanding that he comply with her wishes. Fast forward to the night of Hye-In's fall, Je-Na, who had encountered her, confronted her about the affair between Hye-In and Woo-jin that fueled her deep resentment towards Hye-In. At that time, she grew increasingly frustrated with Hye-In, who still desired Do-on despite her involvement with Woo-jin. In the present, Yuli appeared to blame Je-Na for spoiling her party, despite Je-Na's good intentions of protecting Yuli from making a wrong choice in a boyfriend. Soon after, Yuli revealed that she was aware of the affair between Woo-jin and Hye-In, but had chosen to ignore it. However, Je-Na's actions had unwittingly sabotaged Yuli's chances with Woo-jin. Hearing that, Je-Na was taken aback by her best friend's accusation and realized that Yuli failed to appreciate her efforts in exposing Woo-jin's true nature. Feeling downhearted, Je-Na made her way home. Just as her car was about to leave, Hye-In unexpectedly hopped in and asked for a ride home. There, Je-Na agreed and even stopped at Hye-In's house. Once they reached the room, Hye-In shared everything she knew about Hye-In's fall, presenting a necklace she received from Hye-In. At that time, Je-Na was taken aback when she recognized the necklace. Then, Hye-In revealed that Do-on and Hye-In might accuse Je-Na, but she knew Je-Na wasn't the real culprit. It was Yuli who pushed Hye-In from the roof, wearing a necklace identical to the one given by Woo-jin, who had discovered that Yuli had lost her necklace. In the past, after Je-Na left the rooftop, Yuli confronted Hye-In upon learning about their affair with Woo-jin. Their heated argument escalated, and accidentally, Yuli pushed Hye-In, causing her to fall from the edge of the roof. Then, as Hye-In found her, Yuli looked panicked upon witnessing Hye-In's fall. However, realizing that Hye-In didn't clearly see her face during the incident, Yuli tried to calm herself and conceal her involvement. In the present, Hye-In received a message from Hye-In, asking her to meet on the school rooftop at midnight. Despite having a bad feeling about it, Hye-In tried to convince her to choose another meeting place. However, she disregarded Hye-In's warning and proceeded to the rooftop. Upon reaching the rooftop, Hye-In was unaware that someone else had also climbed up. Suddenly, that person pushed Hye-In, causing her to fall. At the same time, Hye-In, who happened to be nearby, witnessed yet another student from Chungdam High School falling, and she was shocked to see Hye-In as the victim. In the final scene, Do-on visited Hye-In in the hospital, desperately seeking an explanation. Since he received no response, Do-on eventually decided to leave the room. Suddenly, Hye-In woke up and opened her eyes. The series ends. The moral lesson from the series is don't push people off roofs because it's not a very nice thing to do.